Welcome to Longevity's Welding Channel. I'm Tim Roble, and I'm here to introduce you to the MIGWELD 250P, a full 250 amp MIG machine with pulse. The Longevity MIGWELD 250P is a dual phase machine. For hooking up in single phase, you'll want to do black as L1, white as L2, and green for ground. If you were hooking this up for three phase, you would also connect the red wire. In the single phase operation, you'll want to just clip it and hook up the rest. For the regulator, it's simple as just hooking up the barb fitting at the bottom. Once again, I made a trip to Home Depot and bought the Husky universal fitting. And this just plugs right into the back of the machine. Hooking up to the gas outlet becomes super simple. Just a simple push and lock. As far as hooking up the regulator, you'll want to do a quick inspection inside the bottle. Make sure that there are no contaminants. Give it a quick purge to blow anything out. And then you'll hook up the regulator. And you'll give it a slight snug down. Doesn't have to be monster tight. You don't want to blow the head away on these. Just like that. Gas is set up and ready to go. First thing you'll notice when we open up the cover is the dual drive rolls. They're set up for 1.0 millimeter and 0.08 millimeter. I'm going to use the 0.08 millimeters with my 35 thousandths. It actually equates out to 0.09 millimeters, but I've had great luck right now using the 0.8 millimeter with the 35 thousandths wire. You just don't put as much pressure. I'll show you right now how to go through and hook all of this up. You want to take your wire, you want to clip it so there's no kinks. First thing you'll want to do is feed it through. Got a little wire through. Now we'll close this, and you can see right now I got about 3.5 pounds of pressure put on that. Everything's closed and ready to go. Now we'll hook up the torch. Now for hooking up the torch. The torch is the standard Euro connection. What we're going to do is take this wire and feed it through just to get it started. Now the torch is installed. With the machine on, I'm just going to simply now just pull the trigger and wait for the wire to come through. Now a quick test to make sure that we have the rollers adjusted well. What I'll do is just kind of put the gun down at a 45 and give the wire somewhere to go and squeeze the trigger. And that's what we're looking for right there, that we have enough drive roll pressure and that the wire is not flattened out from too much pressure, but that we're set up and good to go. The last step will be our workpiece clamp, or also known as a grounding clamp. It's twist lock, good to go. And then we'll want to apply our nice ground to our welding station or to the metal directly that we're going to be welding on. Right here we have a very simple setup for welding 1/8 inch. Our pulse voltage is set up right here about 4.5. Our base voltage is set up right here about 5. Our pulse frequency is set up right at 5. And our pulse width will set up right at 5. These are good little starting tips for 1/8 inch. We'll take our wire speed and we'll set it up about 5, 5.25, somewhere with there. And what you're going to look for is a nice weld cover. I'm going to use a circle technique and just run a nice bead down this. Well, as you can see here, we have a nice stack of dimes look even with the MIG welder. What I have is a really nice flat bead. If you were listening to it and you know what to listen for, you could tell that I was running a little bit less wire and a little bit hotter. You could turn that up and get a little bit more crackle, like a bacon sound. But I prefer the flatter characteristic. It actually gives you just a tad bit more penetration, and visually it's a very nice look. I want to take a quick minute and show you the technique that I was using. Basically, I came in with the TIG torch in a push method, and basically I was pushing little circles trying to spread the heat. Now there's also a weave method where you could take the heat down here, kind of work it here and then down here, and that makes for a nice weave also. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but I tend to push the torch, so I push the weld puddle along while I'm utilizing these techniques. Now of course, if you were trying to weld uphill, you would want to push that puddle uphill, and if you were welding downhill, you'd want to push that puddle downhill. So I just thought I would clear a little of that up and show some of you newer welders how to use these different techniques and what works best for you. Now that we've done a little bit of welding with the machine, I wanted to talk a little bit more about these two knobs inside. Because basically I give you nice setups just to get you welding, but then we'll talk about the burn back. And I'm going to adjust mine just a little bit hotter, and what that'll do is it'll burn back the wire more after you let off the trigger. It gives it a burn back spike, they call it. It just gives it a final voltage that burns that wire back to a good starting point. For instance, if you're welding and you see that your wire is getting longer and longer and longer every time that you let off the trigger, you want to turn up your burn back. Turn it clockwise for hotter, and if you are not getting enough, then you'll want to turn it counterclockwise down towards 0.02. For the arc force, I've kind of left that alone. I've played with that from 0 to 10, and what that is a good startup amperage. So basically when you pull the trigger, I have it set in what I'll call the 12 o'clock or the 5 mode. When you pull the trigger, that just gives you a nice spool up so it doesn't hit all that amp at once. When would you use, down towards 0? Maybe you're doing some panels on some sheet metal work on your car and you're wanting to patch it in, and you don't want that hard hit, so you can soften that hit. You can soften those amps by turning that down. So that's basically what those two inside are for.
What are my final thoughts for the longevity MIGWELD 250P? To begin with, I thought the knobs were just a little bit busy at the beginning with the pulse, and it took me about 5, maybe 10 minutes to figure out, wow, this is an asset, not really a hindrance. What it did is I just started setting the machine up with all 5s, and then started fine-tuning pulse width, pulse frequency, and pulse voltage. And what I came up with was the optimum weld puddle. The ability, once again, to be able to fine-tune the characteristic that I was looking for out of the bead, and kind of get that stack of dimes look I was looking for in a production unit. What I use the MIG for, I use it for really just getting in there and laying down some wire and knock something out. Where the TIG welder might be a little bit more tedious, the MIG is, with being able to tune this in, you can get in there and really fine-tune your bead and get in there and knock out a lot of production with this machine. With the dual voltages, you could start off in your garage shop, and then if you happen to go into business and go into a business that had 3-phase, be a simple wire up, just add the red wire and you'd be good to go. So I'll give 2 thumbs up on this machine. Worked really well, and I understand all of the knobs and what they do now, and I think you will too. I think you'll enjoy it. Great little unit, and comes highly recommended by me. Thanks for watching Longevity's Welding Channel, and I'm Tim Roble, and I'll see you next time.